All right. Thank you, and everyone, for joining the Internet of Value Foundation New York, episode 174. And for all those who come in the future, I hope you guys find it as valuable as I know I do every single day. The diverse amount of mindsets and perspectives and information that we get to share in these spaces and topics that we speak about. I'm actually um, excited for this topic today. It's something that is it's really relative to when we look at the biological agentile material in structural ways, and question why it moves in these ways that it does, for the way that we perceive it to be today. Of course, talking about ourselves as a Homo sapien species and the organs and different conceptual matters that bind us all together. And so I'm going to grab a video from Michael Levine. I'm going to post it up top. Feel free, anybody in the space, if you guys would like to come up and start speaking and get a conversation going. And if not, it's fine. I'll speak my own thoughts on the video that I post up top, and recommend everybody go and give it a watch after the space if you guys have time. Ever since we X did away with the media function on the profile to find all the content that you post from external sources, always takes me a moment to look down my post to be able to find the video. Nonetheless, got it. Put it up top.
I'm assuming it's a Michael Levin.
Michael Levine. Yeah, he pronounces it different all the time too. To be fair, yeah,
Yeah, I actually never really.
11.
I did not realize that. That's funny.
Yeah, I've heard him say it a few different times. 11, but I've heard him say it a few different times differently. Depends on the day he's having, I guess. All right, so I posted up top, against mind blindness, recognizing and communicating with diverse intelligence. And I really like the way that he puts it today, as a title too, because it speaks to the larger volume of a simplistic but nonetheless, what I would agree with is very prevalent in an inadequate way of being able to conceptualize the immense amount of layering in meaningfulness of ways that actionable steps of interactions have taken, in what would and could be looked at as intelligent ways, ways that minds think. If you think about yourself, right, and the way that you want, that you think about how the mind equivalates, and then you have actionable steps, processes through that, um, and how there are all these different processes that are occurring all around us, which pose the same uh, possible conceptualities and pattern sets, and that we so naively think, in many cases, that we're very singular in form. And yeah, I think it's a very interesting way that he puts it, because it opens up the horizon for thinking more about biologics as states of interactions, and there be it a meaningfulness behind those interactions that we can then take advantage of, in the form of having agile material, and essentially give it the message that it needs, the convincing, the influence behind the reasonable steps of actionable priorities, that this agentile material believes it should be doing. And in some cases, things like cancer, right, could be cured from these types of methodological thinking. So yeah, it's really interesting. Give me one sec, I'll bring some other people up. And Jimmy, you have me blocked, which is interesting. that you're in the space, but nonetheless, welcome.
Well, he just left. He had me blocked forever, and then he unblocked me, and now he's following me. So I don't know what games he's playing today.
I've been blocked for a long time.
Wait, how did he even come to the room? Because you're co-host. If he's blocked.
Oh, you can block. No, he's not blocked. I didn't block him. I don't block people unless you're a what's it called, a bot. But yeah, no, I didn't let him up, so he left. Figures. Anyone else though, feel free. Sasha, 808 NY persistence. Feel free to guys come up, and if you want to join in on the topic and even change the direction we're going to go with it. But yeah, any thoughts so far? Shellfish, Vamsy, welcome up.
Hi, Death Ranger. I'm a little confused on the topic. I think you're speaking about general consciousness, or more about the space. I guess I didn't understand the title.
Well, inside of the space of all possible things, where we believe to be singular in this context of how you put it, consciousness in general, how conscious is the consciousness behind your consciousness? Is there an actionable step of priorities which were taken in recognition of patternized, and in some cases you can think about it as geometries, that led to the relativeness of you even being able to conceptualize the belief of what a conscious could be? Of course, because nobody actually really um, can agree on the terminology, at least that we use to describe what we like to think of as consciousness. I like to think of it more as awareness, and how deeply are you able to measure the states in which those measurable changes that we believe to be the perception of time have of occurring of these changes inside of that. And so, I mean, it's really your whatever you want, I would say.
Oh, I love this topic. Actually, spent a long time studying this stuff from various sources. From what I understand, and there's been a lot of published things on this in scientific sense, but there's also, I don't know, a common thread across all spiritual disciplines in terms of how ultimately uh, what we're experiencing is not real. Is that what you're getting to? In terms of the duality, the dual nature of how we experience reality, and trying to understand, I guess, the frequencies. From what I know, like there's 12, like 12 is a magic number, and once you hit the seventh frequency, then it all kind of melds into one. Right now we're living in a state of between, third dimensional reality, where we're kind of shifting. The earth is actually a state of shifting between third to fifth. Is that kind of the range of what you're speaking about? I wasn't sure.
Well, all of those things could be in the flow boat of the actionable step of processes, in which what leads to some sort of reality, right? And is reality real? Well, reality is as real as real as real, right? I mean, in some sense, like, is it, if what you believe to be is real, is it real? Well, it's pretty hard to argue that it's not real, at least for yourself. And what you believe is what you're going to believe. So, I mean, it's you know as real as whatever your truth is. The frequency thing was interesting. And I think perception plays a huge role whenever we think about any sort of actionable set of processes that occur. And so, whenever you think about maybe a process that would occur, even in a metaphysical sense, right? Which I like to think of that the if we do look at it from a macro perspective, and we just keep searching farther out from the macro and the macro and the macro of the macro. Um, from a universal sense, the geometries in which these electromagnetic frequencies in which we perceive to be, of course, perception, of course, being the largest key in all that we believe to have truth of, um, playing a role in the mathematical properties in which that we are aligned to have as our relative reality. definitely, yeah, plays like a interesting role inside of the thing, but it's more of that's more and still important, but it's more of this uh that's like an outer view perspective in some sense of maybe what I was talking about before with the biological perspective of it. Like that's more relative to the underlying metaphysical layer in which propagates the actual, I think, systemic mathematical views in which we have all of our property beliefs of. But from the perception of cellular thinking. So even from this perspective, take an embryonic state. So you have an embryo here, right? And so you say, well, we have this great embryo here, right? This single thing, and which is going to propagate into whatever it may be, a human, a Homo sapien, or a lizard, or whatever it is going to be that the embryonic state is going to essentially form into. Um, and we think of that as one perceived thing. Yet really, what is the embryo? I mean, the embryo is made up of hundreds of thousands of cells. And so what propagates this information for these cellular units to not only have the code base, the parameter sets of information in which they have to follow, but also propagates the anatomical knowledge that they have with being able to view the properties of space and measurement around them, and the spatial observation, so that cells on the left leg know how long to grow in proportion with the cells on the right leg. And then another question is the deformalities that occur. You know, what breaking in the passageway of whatever sort of and this today, you know, is from a biological view is a distortion of electromagnetic frequency between the associated cells' existence and their ability to have what would be a cognitive light cone of their own. And so, you know, this own spatial awareness, if you will have it in some sense, just like how we think of ourselves on this larger level. And you know, what does that mean from a bigger perspective? You know, if all can be what somewhat programmed, how conscious is the conscious? How deep does it go?
Are you speaking about free will?
You could you
Down to
could
a
maybe
cellular level?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, it's like one way to put it, I guess, in some sense. You know, I don't think there is a such thing as a free will, but maybe that's still maybe more macro perspective of it. It's more, you know, this alignment from a biological perspective. If we understand the perception, if you will have it, of the spatial awareness and the anatomical awareness and all the different processes. I think it's something of the measurable of 7 different processes that a cell can learn. What does this allow us to, you know, then take with that information and propagate it forward in actionable steps? So I think it's more so what Michael Levin is going into in the video that I've posted above.
Oh, I need to watch that. Shellfish, what is shellfish one?
Yeah, it's just good afternoon, everybody. So it's kind of goes on Michael Levine's and Vamsey's with the frequency. I was thinking more along the lines of how in Oriental medicine, they say each organ corresponds to a different emotion, and how just over time, as the hormones or the life experiences, life tests that we go through either weaken or fortify those organs to become very strong through our experiences or very weak. They play throughout the body, the energy channels feeding the heart or the stomach. You know, stomach usually has to do with like worrying too much. The kidney has to do with anger, and if they're all out of balance, that's when you have serious dysfunction happening. So, Vamsy, I can see where you were going with the frequency and the energy, and it kind of all ties together with more of the Eastern medicine. So I don't know if,
Yes.
yeah.
There's a lot of, picking up on that, there's a lot to do with energy medicine, that being the next frontier of medicine, actually. And that's working from like your higher consciousness down. And that's getting into much deeper stuff on that level. Because I was learning from a guy who was completely paralyzed from the chest down, and he resolved that he was going to heal himself and walk within 3 months, and he did, and he documented the process. And that was all self healing from an energy perspective. Don't get me wrong, there was definitely Western medicine involved as a complement to what he was doing, but he did defy a lot of standard medical predictions about what would happen to him. So we see that stuff happen all the time. Death Ranger, going back to what you were saying in regards to cells evolving, choosing, and that biological aspect, and also your, I don't know, take on the fact that we have no free will. Is that what you believe? That it's all kind of preordained and directed outside of our control? You have the bell ring? 1 second.
Well, yeah, for sure.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, especially when you put it in the manner of you don't have control over the things that are around you. Yes, that is very much so. The choice that you have is that to be in belief of something or not to be in belief of something. But more than that, um, there be it no real, I would say, free will behind the underlying macro states and perspectives that have aligned to exist behind the influential perception that they are. So, somewhat of if you would have it, so you brought up a simulation a little bit earlier. And so simulation is more, possible perspective of uh, what is actually like created the fundamental underlying layer that is then poses that mathematical propagation and what our we believe our reality to be. But nonetheless, if it is a simulation or not, which could be, it could not be, um, everything that exists is an assimilation of a combination of atomic frequencies relative to the vibration in which the production of our perception of belief of them is, uh, in one way or another.
Um, well, Donald Hoffman did publish over like 96 papers on this topic in terms of how what we're perceiving is just kind of like a cheap headset, like the reality that we perceive. But that being said, I think that we are very much an experiment in free will. That there is choice, even if something is preordained from how that you're going to go from point A to point B. How you get there is not. So I think it's a sad state of affairs to think that everything is kind of completely out of our control.
Well, it is and it isn't. And to Don Hoffman's point, actually, that it was interesting, right? Because for an individual or a perceived notion of existence to be relative to right an individual wearing a headset or a headset being worn, well, then that would mean that there is an underlying fundamental layer behind the user behind the headset. And I think this actually speaks to the metaphysical layer in which, behind the means of whatever maybe be the universe or reality in itself, is that fundamental physical layer. I like to think of it, and Michael Levin actually speaks about this sometimes too, taken from his perspective a little bit, but a platonic state of minds, very similar to how you think about sacred geometry and this Platonic metaphysical measurement of mathematical proportions, in which we believe the Big Bang came from, for the most part, or some sort of energetic existence, right? Because before the universe existed, there was nothing, and then there was something. Um, and from that, um, if it be it that this state in this underlying metaphysical layer is a representation of a more macro perspective existence, well, then we be it. That all is perceived as the notion of existence. Everything that exists is you on a different metaphysical layer in some sort of proportion of propagation. And so, free will, yes and no. Does everything that is going to happen always going to happen because it was the chosen pathway? I believe that to be so. But did you choose that pathway? I also believe that to be so.
Well, then you get into parallel realities and stuff, and also to the point of um, Big Bang, and then there was nothing, and then there was something. Something cannot come from nothing. So, as a scientific principle, you can't kind of really build on that. But from what I understand, you're not. It's all happening simultaneously, right? All of these realities, and you're just shifting uh, from one to another constantly, like billions of times supposedly per second. So it's all already in existence. This is what the Akashic records are about, which Robert Grant calls the blockchain of the universe. It's already kind of laid out there, and your consciousness is just what you're experiencing as a reality is where your consciousness is shifting to at any moment.
Well, could be, but if it is, it doesn't necessarily change from the conceptualized matter of like what can we utilize that for? What can we do with that? Is always kind of like the question of that's important to me. But yeah, I mean that definitely could be like the state of the why reality is the way that we perceive it to be. Um, but then the bigger question is then why? Why is it that exact way? You know, I think it's. I had a thought beforehand though, but I lost it for a moment there. So I'm sorry. Give me a second. Or anybody else that wants to jump in too. 808's been up here. 808. You have any thoughts on anything we spoke about?
I have many thoughts. It's wild though. You know, a lot of these things are duality. And when we speak of these things, there's not one without the other. And that's something where we always come into conflict with accepting. When we are hard in accepting things that we have no control over, like some things that we go through life. Our experience of reality is not a fixed one. It's a dynamic interplay between all of our minds, relationship, and the world around us. How we examine conditions like what you guys are talking about, mind blindness, which is affected by a lot of different things that we do every day, even by our own cognitive biases and confirmation biases, and all the spectrum of different biases we all have, because we all do have them inherently within us. That's just human nature to have biases towards the things we like, towards the things we don't like, and being accepting of those things makes you become aware of those types of feelings, thus then allows you to steer your own path when you walk through life, when you come through different experiences that lead you through all these different things. So it's always, to me, mind-blowing that we are living in a duality no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, no matter what we're thinking. Like Vanzi is saying, we're always interplaying and shifting our energies in different ways, in different spots, just like consciousness and subconsciousness. We also have the Western lens of how we think of things, and the indigenous knowledge of how we think of things. And for me, as a person of indigenous foundations, I always flow towards the more ancient teachings, which then also had me um, combat my own biases towards my own culture, which really opened up doors to even understanding my own culture even more, which blows my mind because every time I walk that same path, I start to find similarities in concepts we see today. Like I always share about like quantum technology, quantum concepts, and entanglement, which all of our ancestors understood at a much deeper level on the naturalistic side than we do on the technical side, which is mind-blowing because we're talking about concepts, dualities, all of these different things that they already and understood, but we see it in a different lens and a different time frame. So that's why it always blows my mind when I always go back to that times and always study those things. I still am remembered about some things we are playing with today, like distributed technology and stuff like that. That's not a known early concept. These things has ancient roots. to distributed technology, which is mind blowing. We think of technology as software programs, applications, and stuff like that. Where back in the days, they thought of these things as not as technology as we see now, but tools and thoughts and how they did things, like how my ancestors distributed land and things of that sort. They called the Ahupua'a system, where everything was distributed to the people from mountain to the sea, where they were able to abundantly grow and help each other live in a shared collective conscious environment, which is profound and was done tens and twenties of thousands of years ago. And in history books, it doesn't tell about that time frame. Even in the Bible, time frame within how things have been done and the pathways that have been done has all been distorted, in my opinion. And it's factual. You can see it there of how things has been taught to us in time frames. Even the way we, like I always share, even the way we measure time changed hundreds of years ago, which messes with our what our mindset of how we read things, how we let things bombard our thoughts and our processes, which thus then what has us perceives our lifestyle and the way we live a certain way. So crazy, right? But then once you start to peel back the layers and you not just come consciously aware, but physically aware, spiritually aware, subconsciously aware, and you start to align yourself. That's what you were talking about too, you guys, earlier, about when you start to align yourselves together, your thoughts and your actions and all that. You start to be more aware and more clear conscious of the things you're doing. Um, Sometimes we think we are in a clear conscious state of mind, but then our own biases, even in that, still has an effect on it, which is mind blowing. That's why contemplating is very important and always grounding. But that was my thoughts on this, because it's it. There's something I always believed in. It's a collective conscious and understanding of not just ancient knowledge, but having our modern knowledge, combining them and bridging them together to give a better, robust understanding of a lot of things that we already understand as a human being, but still trying to gain a hold and a control over it. You know what I mean? It's mind blowing.
100%, man. I'm so glad that you brought up the collective consciousness part, which is like it was such a great example of like increased awareness, like from multiple layers, right? The spatial, the spiritual, the anatomical, the survival, where it could be that could be considered like a social. Yeah, I loved the example, and you also reminded me of. What I wanted to say beforehand, because it was like the from nothing to something thing. Because I do believe that everything that exists is from nothing. We kind of have some sort of quantifiable proof from that, from the thought of quantum vacuum, right? Where essentially at any point in everywhere in space there is some sort of phenomenon of interaction occurring, if you will have it something from nothing. But I think it's also interesting if you think about it like this: for the conceptualization of nothing to exist, there has to be something. Because for nothing to be nothing, what are you comparing it to? It's relative to something. And if there is a something, then there is an everything. And for everything to exist, it also has to be part of nothing. And I think, I don't know if I know a better way to explain it. I think that went pretty well done. Sasha, welcome up, man.
Yeah, I really like this discussion, and as you were suggesting that the from nothing something can emerge, I believe in that as well. I am just looking a little bit closer as to the human relationship with that fact. Let's just attribute that as a physics based emergent property that does exist. The macro micro relationship exists and cause and effect exists. What's very interesting is what human beings do with that, and that ranges because of the micro level of that experience ranges in just a variable just plethora of ways, from culture to capture to ideology to religion. It's just kind of all over the place. And when you study those reactions, you start to see maybe a more definite root structure, because you get collapse states of ideologies. You get ideas and concepts that last for 100 years, and then something emerges from that that is more scientifically grounded. It's more accessible. It feels real. Your brain, as you were mentioning earlier, alignment, the social conscious alignment seems more prevalent. An example of this is geocentrism versus heliocentrism, and the dangers of the psychology that preceded all of that, and the effects that it can have. So I feel we're in like a melting pot, and we kind of always have been when it comes to interpretation of that emergent quality of the environment, of nature, of the cosmos. And it's difficult to stray away from projecting our egoic reflection onto that. But when we step back and we see that our reflections in the present day are just kind of like ripple effects of what they used to be, then it paints the picture a little bit clearer. And out of that, I think you can emerge. It's as like a free agent. I think it's very parallel to the the biological reaction of like mitochondria being an external influence from the start of things, and then working its way into our cellular programming on a very real level, and establishing a relationship within the cell structure that's in our composite, because mitochondria weren't always present in our states, in our human biology, and they have negotiated a way to not only infiltrate, I don't want to make it sound bad, but to actually work in symbiosis with it. I believe there's a term for this. It's eluding me right now, but it's like something symbiosis. I think biosymbiosis. There might be some more elaborate term to it that I'm reflecting on. But anyways, long story short, thanks for having me. I think that a lot of these things overlap, and they fold into one another. And once you can observe that folding process, and that is the collapse state, when you when you can see the structure of these overlaying thoughts and ideas, that's the emergent state that we find ourselves in, is making sense out of all this complexity.
Oh, I love it, Sasha. Love it so much. And I also loved how you finished with using the word emergent, because like emergent properties, or right, emergence to us today is just simply just another term we use relative to not really being able to explain all the different types of measurements and propagations of energy that formated whatever assimilation it did, and why it's so important for us to be able to one day be able to not even term these things anymore, these evolutionary properties, in some sense, as you really well described, um, the
Well,
propagation.
well, yeah, Death Ranger. And to that point, I'm a linguistic guy. Like, that's what I went to college for. So this is like a branch off of that for me. In the last 5-10 years post college, have been sort of go at my own pace, explore the connections between what I was trained in from like an academic standpoint, and that's like the merger of the two. It's like the architecture of higher education right now is very structured. It's very traditional. It maintains that homeostasis aspect of information, and then when you're out of there, you have the ability to deviate from that and see all of the integrations of what you learned in a very centralized form, and incorporate a decentralized approach to it. And that's very interesting, because a lot of this, I could talk about this for hours. Obviously, the interchangeability of language, and how we morph words over time, and the etymologies, the roots of what phrases and words used to mean versus what they mean now. This is symbolic of that survival aspect of what we may have faced to begin with, the survival instinct of humanity, to really accommodate whatever the circumstances are and embed it into our language, is very indicative of that.
You said something very like I always talk to because you're talking about you said epistemology in one of your sentences, and how we see framework and interpret some of these words now. Like someone was talking about simulation theory, where in the conscious and talking about reality, and it has simulation theory and the modularity of mind analyzed the mental processes and isolation, wherein more ancient theories, you have an understanding that the cognitive was more of a living web of relationships. So how they shared what they knew and understand and how we interpreted that information was perceived by how we saw things and not how they saw it, which is mind blowing.
It really is, and the more fine tuned we are able to grasp from a measurement perspective of all of these different changes that are occurring, the more the tool sets that we learn to develop will be able to have, magnitudes larger of changes, it's really it's exciting, just like you had mentioned before, Sasha, like the merging of these two fields in some sense, in the way that it is for your mind. And Also, by the way, congratulations, because many people do not beat the technical indoctrination. It's very difficult for people to overcome that. And that's why they very much so have that term indoctrination, is because getting past what was on the piece of paper is also a feat in itself, I think. But Yeah, that coordination of being able to conceptualize what is occurring on even these micro states, I think only further improves our understanding of what's also occurring on the macro states.
Yeah, and the harsh there is a harsh reality to that's just ingrained in the study of all this, and that is the study of collapse itself and the collapsing states. What we do with like our opinions on a very approachable level, if our ideology is wrong and we are presented with information that is conflicting, there is a natural inclination to deny that, and beyond that. To disseminate the starter opinion or the starter perspective and spread it out to other ranges as to try to preserve it. So an example of this would like just be the nature of a lie and how it compounds itself, and it has to integrate into multiple facets of your life if it's a serious enough lie, to the point where it has then like inseminated these non-corrupted states across the board. And I think to some degree that is what we face today, specifically with like the industrialization and the academic systems at play.
And you are dropping bombs today, Sasha, in a very spatial way, not physical.
And it's very important bombs, yeah. Like I was saying earlier when we talk about some of these things, because even in historical records that has been used to create our academics, really wasn't created or brought forth on its foundational understanding and knowledge that where it came from. To even medicine, medicinal purposes, look at how we came from understanding our bodies more so and using natural remedies to being pushed forth to be taught to use synthetic means. And a lot of these things. And now we're going full blown backwards and understanding that there's a lot of natural remedies that does hold true to what they said it did thousands of years ago. That's recently very powerful. One of them so basic is the kalo plant. Something we cultivate for thousands of years and we brought here to the islands. It has so much different antiviral antibodies, so much different types of cancerous anti-cancerous prospects to it, down to even how you're saying selfish easternized medicine and understanding of those things too, so vast that modern or western mindset thought those things were tonic and of witchcraft and wizardry, which is mind-blowing that at that time that's what they thought it was. And then now we're in more in the future and now we're understanding our well, more of that side is understanding that these things were not of that sort, but were of natural remedies that really helped our bodies even at its molecular level within us. And also understanding that it's not just what we try to heal physically, but it's also our mental and our spiritual state that also need healing and alignment to fully heal your body, which is so profound and hold facts and so true to this day that it's not that Western ideology strips away. It's just they reframe it in a way that we inherently lose the understanding that our ancestors used to do these things with. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's crazy about this duality in our mindset and how we perceive things. And when we are be able to come to how can I say, like you're saying, Sasha, earlier with your own teachings, and you come to a wall that you can't overcome. You kind of said you tend to push it away or push it down, so for you yourself not to believe it, even though it's factually true. And that's what we have been doing for thousands of years, and it's still so profound to this day that we still believe in things that has been not factually true, that has been pushed from 1,000 years ago. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think a great example of that, just keep it real short, is the word antibiotic, and in its modern context, it's been around for less than 100 years as far as like how we approach it. But if you surveyed 100 people, the next 100 people that you encountered in a public space, what they thought an antibiotic was, they would have a picture, a version of it. It'd be a bottle, it'd be a liquid that you could buy over the counter or by needing to go to the doctor when you're sick. But the nature of the word, the etymology of the word itself, is like important there too. It's anti-life, it's anti biological systems. So how it's incorporated into the modern pharmacology of things makes sense if you're uh, explained it by a pharmacist. But at the root, those combination of words mean something as well.
You know, you just made to me what would be and is my argument towards why I don't think we have many human beings, but we have many Homo sapiens. Because, human being, at least the way that we've defined that representation, is supposed to be a Homo sapien that has the understanding beyond these tool sets that are representing the times that they are existing in as far as our modern times go. And that was really just a really great example, actually. I mean, that was like excellent. And even like how bacterials are also made from different fungi and stuff. And so it's like people, it's like you start learning about that, and you're just like, wait, this is actually from a deadly fungus. Oh, interesting. Shellfish, please.
Anti
Wait,
venoms,
sorry.
vaccines, it's all the same. It all folds back into itself. Yep, you're right on.
Yep, exactly. Shellfish, though, please, you got your hand up.
Yeah, so if you're a child and you like touch fire, like the first thing you do is like pull your hand away because you know it hurts. It's like painful and you most likely don't ever do it again. Um, the same doesn't go for like when we have like the cellular level unless you do start like doing self-reflection. Like the nervous system on the inside isn't quite as sensitive as the proprioceptive skills that we have on our hands and along our skin and I'm like really appreciating lately how much meditation and journaling and self reflection helps to put in perspective um, each organ and the emotion that's connected to it and the intention when you eat your food, what you say to yourself. I mean, it even goes down to programming your water. I'm kind of curious. I'm looking at like the table and like my parents have like all these pharmaceuticals that have like this is the medicine that you have to take and then like this is like a lot of it I feel like is poison to them. And I feel like I wonder if I did the same thing with vitamins and actually wrote on their medicine instead of vitamin and had that mentality as they were taking it. Um, if it would actually help them heal quicker. I don't know. Because I know the water exercises really work when you program your water, you sing to it, you charge it in the correct way. But man, this has been a great space death beast, Sasha. I'm like so happy you had this today. It's been
Yeah,
Me
wonderful.
too, you know.
and
I just was telling Death, man, I miss his spaces.
I know, and it incentivized me to. I was like, I gotta put one up this week.
But you were saying such mind blowing things too, you know, Selfish. There's a lot of things that I forgot. There's actually a phrase for that case study that you were just sharing that you should just put a different label on the bottles and give feed it to them. I forgot the name of it, but I can't get it off the tip of my tongue. But what's important about what you were saying about all of these things is there's lost I lost my train of thought now because yeah, I got
Well,
so
well,
much things
Beast,
going on.
if I told my mom that her heart, like, because she had like a blockage in her heart, if I told her the stress came from I don't even know what the heart organ is right now. I'm trying to think for that emotion, lack of love or blocking love maybe. Or if I told her that her kidneys were full of anger and the reason she's drinking so much is X, Y, and Z, and like put it in that perspective of like, okay, this medication is because you're not doing enough self love or you're not doing enough of X, Y, and Z. If you practice these mindful things as you are taking these prescriptions, but I'm going to give you this medicine over here that are vitamins, and this is what's really important. You can take these temporarily as a band-aid, but if we start working on these emotional things that are probably what is causing it because you didn't pay attention to, ouch, the fire was hot in the first place. um, yeah, because it takes a while to get back there. It's really a huge course correction, especially for people that have been doing it their entire
Well, yes,
lives.
yes. Now I'm getting a better picture of what I was gonna frame about what you were saying in my view. As it's all important because it's you really aligning yourself to really understanding who you are as a person. That's why meditating and contemplating is very important, and it does help your conscious really understand who you are. That speaks to your subconscious. Even in that duality, your conscious and subconscious is communicating to each other, but your subconscious is sleeping while your conscious is awake during the day. So the actionable steps you do during the day feeds into a library that your subconscious reads while you're sleeping. That's why when you're dreaming, you're in a state of moe uhani, which I was sharing earlier in some spaces far back is what my ancestor called it, is when you're in a dreamlike state, but you're sort of in control but not. And there's other levels to it, but it's your subconscious telling you it doesn't really understand the thing that you're feeding it. And that means what you're walking through every day is not aligning with your actual thoughts that you had within yourself, trying to answer that. So when you start to meditate and contemplate, really truly push all thoughts out and really listen to yourself and look into yourself, you start to hear yourself in your own thoughts, not the thoughts of others and the thoughts of things that you bombard yourself with every day. And that's like how you're saying, your hearts, your kidneys, all of these different things in you and the different feelings that they represent is not so far fetched. That's also knowledge of different parts of your body. That's all interconnected to different chemical things that we create in our bodies by what our conscious minds releases these different energies and chemicals. And this is not far-fetched or fake. This is actual, can be backed by scientific studies where they show stress levels and your stress releasing multiple different chemicals that doesn't allow your body to heal or even allow your body to have a good chemical reaction to allow you to have those positive thoughts. So what then we do, we start to um, restructure ourselves during our daily lives to kind of reconnect those things, whether it's like how you're saying, you're telling yourself positive thoughts, positive thinking, or you just switching things up and relabeling certain things to like do. So that's like going inside, helping myself learn my own language, because that's something I had to teach myself, because for over 100 years, my own culture, we weren't able to even learn our own language within schools, and it was uh yeah, it was made illegal for us to even learn and even speak. But then by me helping myself relearn what I already knew inside of me, that's in my DNA. I labeled my doorknobs, my light switches, my computers, my everything to the car, so I can not just visually and physically see what I'm doing and also saying it, but it's always there. And it's like you are conditioning yourselves for these things in many different ways on many different levels. It's wild.
That's right, and I don't know. Shellfish, you brought us back here full circle, but Sasha and 808, they kept with it. You got us right back to the question: how conscious is your conscious, and the layers in between? And I don't know if that was like a better little segment right there. Sasha, you had your hand up though. Go ahead, man, and then I'll probably close up in the next like 2 to 5.
Oh no, I'm very eager to hear how you're going to close this because I'm going to add a layer to this that Shellfish sort of prompted into existence because I was thinking about it. There's a handful of people, you obviously, Death Ranger, and Shellfish as well, who we've had ongoing discussions over a range of 3 years, and some folks here have had them much longer. So you know where I stand on particular topics like artificial intelligence, and that's ever evolving. But some of the earlier discussions that we had about how time works and the retrocausal nature of it, these are embedded in some of the runaway concepts and research that I've done since then. So when Shellfish was discussing the situation going on with her family member, I was thinking of since introducing these concepts to you guys 3 years ago, or where I stand on them, um, there's been certain emergences in my interpersonal relationships with older folks who are struggling with at different levels of memory retention. So from all the way full out dementia and Alzheimer's to early onset, I've been in the in the arc of influence for 4 or 5 people that are across the board on there, and it hasn't gone unbeknownst to me because of the pre-existing interests in conversation, research, things I've read, things I've spoken about that have gone into that. And so this corroborates the idea that we're like the mitochondrial system in a generational way, in that we have the ability to introduce the novelty of emergent properties, whether that's medicine, health, reconciliatory, whatever it is, to not necessarily erase everything that's occurred, but to mediate to a point of reflective ability to where then healing may be an emergent property. So it's very interesting because yeah, a lot of folks struggle with memory and with remembering events in their life. And now that I think about it, I've been there with several family members and some strangers, and each interaction I hold so very heavily on me as not necessarily being someone who's going to bring them out of it, but someone who's going to like connect them with what's really happening in that moment. And I couldn't help but to mention that.
My grandmother had dementia and Alzheimer's. It's kind of near and dear to me, Sasha. So I'm gonna follow closely as you keep doing research and keep me posted, please, because yeah, it's definitely something I'd like to keep an eye on.
Sasha, did I ever tell you the reason I'm here?
I'm sure in many ways, yes, but maybe not succinctly. No.
Well, it's for that exact reason. I'm here for you, for all of you, because this is the next change. And take it historical wise, if you will. History doesn't necessarily repeat, but it sure does usually rhyme of how it's written. There is usually a very small portion of the individuals that are part of the species at that point in time that drive the philosophical and technological changes of that society. And maybe not all of us but maybe all of us in this space will be part of that. And some will be bigger drivers than others, but every single cog has a place, and every single bolt is important. And so that's why I'm here.
I thought it was going to be a challenge for you to wrap it up, but it wasn't. So yeah, very well done. And yeah, I think that that's a role that's very difficult for anyone to come to terms with because of the responsibility that's associated with that. Because we're engaging with our family, our friends, with strangers online, with information, with misinformation. It's just a constant bombardment, and to be the stable source of reliability in that and something that at the same time is going to grow and adapt and evolve, even if that's on a neurological level only. Because, you know, if I put my hand to a flame right now, it's going to burn my skin. So I haven't trained my exoskeleton and mitochondria to prevent that from occurring yet, but it's an alert system. However, the brain, you can get your brain to a point of like being a stable source of reliability and depended on when all things are seemingly falling apart around you, and that's a pretty high responsibility for anybody who's tasked with it. So I applaud you, sir.
Well, don't applaud me. You guys are doing the hard work. But I do love you guys, and I really appreciate everybody for coming today. This was such a fun a conversation. Say fun. Sorry, I try not to. I stayed away from that word, as its pretense existence meaning was actually something strange. But it was really enjoyable though today. I loved this, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the night. We may be back Thursday this week for another space, but if we are not, I love you guys, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the week. And aloha.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if you do, but I'll be around all the time. And thank you, man. Thank you guys, especially for holding this space. Loved it. Hello, everybody.
Aloha, man. And thank you for being here. Night, everyone.